In a previous video, I walked you through 5 crucial things you need to do to get your laser engraving business, or any business really, up and running. And that seemed to be received pretty well. I got lots of email and certainly comments in the video itself. So I thought it would be good to kind of continue that discussion. And this time, what I wanted to talk about is, now that your laser business is in theory up and running, what are 5 good tips and considerations you need to worry about to keep your laser business running? And if getting started is difficult, but keeping things running is at least as hard. So if that's what you're interested in, then stick around. How's it going, everybody? I'm Steve and I make everything, and welcome back to the shop, where together we use modern workshop technologies to make your world. And as I mentioned in the lead-in, this time I wanted to kind of talk about 5 things that you need to do to keep your laser business up and running. And that may sound simple, but there are some learning exercises, and you'll realize along the way that you'll run into things that you really didn't expect. So with that, let's get going on tip number 1. So tip number 1 in keeping your business running once it's been established, is just understanding a couple of really basic business challenges. And the first one of these is just around scalability. There's really 2 things in your business that are critical path. One is you, and the other is your laser. And you have to understand that if you start to get busy, and this is in particular, if this is a side hustle for you, there's 15 or 20 hours, maybe more, in a week that you have to account for that you weren't accounting for before in your business. So for you especially, you have to decide how you're going to manage that. The second thing is limitations of your equipment. Most people will at least only have one laser to start. And if you're busy on a job with that laser, that means you can't be working on something else. So you have to make a decision. And that usually involves either you working longer hours to kind of synchronize or serialize some of these jobs in through your laser, or you can spend money and get a second laser, and there's advantages to both of those. The second thing around these basic challenges is understand that there's going to be more equipment to buy. Now, we bought the big ticket items when we got the business up and running, but now that we're kind of there, if you're an online business, there's 2 crucial things you're going to need. The good news is they're fairly cheap. The first one is a good postal scale, and they don't if you're in the kind of business that I'm in for volume stuff, most of it's pretty small. It's coasters and keychains and those kinds of things. So you can get a relatively cheap postal scale, and I'll put a link up in the description below and a picture up above here for the one that I got. Works really well. It's fairly small, so if you're shipping something massive, you're not going to be able to use that most likely. So you have to be prepared for your business by the scale that suits your business. If you're making big signage, then a small postal scale won't work. The next thing you're going to need there is a label printer. And this is crucial if you're doing things like Etsy. Etsy, when you make a sale and you're processing the order, you can have Etsy just give you the postal label in effect. So it'll generate the label for you, and all you have to do is print it. But to do that, you need typically a 4x6 label printer. You can print on full-scale paper, but then you're into weird taping of packaging and stuff. So this is easy because you can just spit out the label, stick it on the box, and ship it. So you're going to need one of those, and I'll put a link to the one that I bought down below, and also a photo here up above. They're cheap, which is the nice thing. So, anywhere from $100 up, and you can buy one. They're small, they sit on your desk. I have mine actually on my desk right here beside my laptop, and it works fine. So you make sure you pick up those 2 items if you're doing online sales. And that's kind of the first things around understanding some of the typical business challenges once you're up and running. Okay, so my tip number 2 for keeping your business up and running is expect the unexpected. Now that might sound obvious, but it doesn't matter how long you've been in business, whether it's 1 week or 20 years. You may think you've seen everything, but you haven't. And there's always something that'll hit you from the side that you completely blindsided by something. And the first of these is a lesson I learned the hard way, which is recently I ran into a customer came to me and said, "Hey, I grow tomatoes," and that's all they grow. And they said, "When I sell these, I'd like to sell some named garden stakes so that when people plant these who buy 3 or 4 different varieties, they know which tomatoes are which." And I thought, okay, I can make those for you. They're really cheap. I make them out of acrylic. But I completely underestimated that success. I made, of his 8 or 10 different varieties, I made 4 sets in 4 different colors of acrylic, and I gave them to him, and I thought for sure he would sell 3 or 4, literally 3 or 4 of these stakes. Because honestly, it's a tomato, it grows in your garden. You look at it when the tomato turns red, you eat it. But apparently people really like to know that which plants are which. And maybe I get it, I don't know. But anyway, I made these 4 sets, and he called me back a couple days later and said, I need 60 more of these. And I was completely baffled, but I still had some material, so I made him some more. And I normally carry 4 or 5, maybe sometimes 6 different colors of this of 1/8 inch acrylic. So I made some more in various colors. And 2 days later, this past weekend, he called me again and said, guess what? I need more of these, and I had to make some more. The challenge was I was already very short on material. So I said, like, you can't have blue, you can't have red, you can have orange. Anyway, it was a bit of a negotiation to get things. Fortunately, when I saw the first trigger on this, I immediately ordered some more acrylic, which arrived in time, and now I have more of it in stock. But it's, make sure that you're not underestimating the success of what your customer's trying to do, especially for volume things like this. Next on this list of unexpected events is equipment failure, and all equipment's going to fail. But for the most important things in your business, the crucial things, of course, are your laser, and it's got a consumable in it called the laser tube, and that thing will inevitably go bad at the worst opportunity. So make sure, if it's crucial you have your laser up and running and you can't be down for 3 or 4 days, make sure you keep an extra one in stock, laser tube. I keep one. Your other things, your laptop may fail, and that takes in, if you only have one, it takes out your design studio, it takes out your, moving files to your laser. It's just bad. So not that you can stock an extra laptop just in case, but you need to be prepared for your computer failing. Anyway, that's kind of the things that you'd run into the most for unexpected events, but just don't assume you've seen everything, because you haven't, trust me. Anyway, that's tip number 2. So tip number 3 is, it seems a little more obscure, but it's equally important to anything else you'll hear here. And that is copyright matters. So if you're just doing your own design, or you're maybe buying designs off of Etsy or something, make sure that you're paying attention to the copyrights of things. If you're borrowing images, or the licensing, if you buy an SVG file off of Etsy from somebody, make sure that you're allowed to distribute copies of that, not the file itself, but things you make with it. Some vendors on Etsy will say this is only for personal use, and if you start using that for selling, in that particular case, it's not likely that that person is going to sue you, but it's possible depending on the person and how crucial the image is. Images, you can go to images.google.com and you can find an image for anything. Again, you can look at the license on those things for the most part, so make sure that things are either public domain or Collective Commons, or just things that you can reuse without penalty. You may have to buy those as well. If there's something that you just can't live without, you may have to go to the person who created it and say, hey, I want to license this. And again, make sure that you can license it for reselling likenesses of it in volume. The other thing around this is just make sure that your own stuff has copyrights on it as well. So when you do something, and this is really important if you're on Etsy for sure, because there are millions of people, and if you create the best thing ever, people will clone it. So make sure that you put copyrights on stuff, especially if you're selling SVG files on Etsy. So anyway, keep that in mind. That's the copyright and licensing considerations. And you wouldn't normally think about these, but now that you're in the business of selling in volume, you have to. Otherwise, you expose yourself, and sooner or later, you're gonna trigger somebody big. Like if you had a Coca-Cola logo on something, guaranteed you're gonna get hit. Or Mickey Mouse is another one. Disney likes to sue people for Mickey Mouse. And that's the copyright issues. Okay, tip number 4 for keeping your business up and running. Now that you're shipping things, make sure that you have things packaged properly. And there's 2 facets to this. The most obvious one is when you say you're going to ship, if you have 2 or 3 days shipping, make sure you hit those numbers. If you're late for any reason, it looks really bad on you but if it does look like you're going to be late, like maybe, you know, you're waiting for new envelopes or new boxes or whatever, then go back to the customer and say, hey, I know I said I could do this in 3 days. I can't, it's going to take 5 days. But always leave them the option of saying, no, I'll refund your money. Like, you have to give them that option. If you explain it though, odds are really good they'll thank you and say, you know, I understand. Just make sure you do that. The other thing I do is just around, you know, making the packaging look like you care. So if you're shipping cork coasters, you could easily throw them in a bubble envelope. And when the user or the buyer opens it and pours out your coasters on the table, they go, yeah, these are coasters. But there's a whole experience missed there. And in the last video, we talked a bit about branding. This is yet another opportunity for you to build around your brand. So what I do normally is, if I'm shipping something like coasters, inside my shipping box, I'll include another smaller box where the coasters fit very tightly, or whatever I'm shipping. And I usually make those myself. I have for any of the coasters I ship, I have a package design that I can cut out of actually reused cardboard. Every box you get from online purchases, you can save those boxes and reuse them. And I cut shipping boxes out of them and stick them together and put my coasters in there. They fit very tightly. But more importantly, on the lid of that box, I have my logo, I have a thank you, I have a open here so they know they can just cut a piece of tape and open it. It's just a little warmer experience. So make sure you're doing something like that. You can buy your boxes. I prefer to use you know, the recycled cardboard because I hate filling up landfills or depots for things. So you know, and you can even put that on your box as well. You know, just an indication that you care about the environment and this box has been recycled from something else. So keep it in perspective. It's very important for keeping your business running. So we're at tip number 5, the final tip here that you know, I can kind of help you with. And it might not seem like a tip, but it really is. And that is, be patient for revenue. When you start your business, you're certainly going to give a lot of things away. I mentioned in the last video, you need to be prepared to make and give samples away. But it takes a while. This is a slow business. It's got a slow burn to get going. So just make sure that you're not setting yourself up for disappointment by saying, oh, I'm going to turn on my you know, company sign outside and people will be burning down the doors to get to me. They won't. So just be prepared for that and expect that it's going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months before you even get a first sale. But it will happen. And once you get going, word of mouth really kind of takes off. The last thing here around being patient is, if you do want to accelerate it, then always be looking for new opportunities to open up new sales channels. So for me personally, as I mentioned in the previous video, I was predominantly custom work. I've now expanded to online sales on my own website for volume things, you know, coasters and whatnot. But also look at other avenues. So if you don't have an Etsy store, open one. I opened one recently. It's just kind of getting up and running now. But, you know, it's one more opportunity. And the reason for this, aside from increasing your odds for selling things, is if one of those revenue sources dries up for some reason, you know, Etsy decides you have a copyright strike and they close your store, and they've done this, and you can see all kinds of horror stories on YouTube about people that this has happened to. Hence the point about watching copyrights. You know, if that revenue source dries up, then you always have another revenue source. So, you know, keep these things in mind when you're planning your revenue. And like I said, be patient. But if you can't be patient, then try and find more revenue streams. Anyway, that's the tip there. So there's our 5 tips for once your business is up and running, to keep it running. Some of these seem kind of simple, but like I said, you're gonna think these are obvious, but they aren't, and you're gonna run into things you never expected, or you know, sales don't happen the way you want. There's just a million things that can happen here. Anyway, let me know if this was useful. We can keep going on some of these things. By all means, if you see things that or if you have things that you'd like to talk about in these videos, let me know. Just put a comment in or shoot me an email. My email address is in every description on every video. And I'm happy to do videos on this kind of stuff because I do think it's important for people to succeed. and, you know, take advantage of everything they can, including, you know, previous experience from me and other people around. And you can see lots of this kind of stuff on YouTube and Google searches. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. As always, I'll put a video on the side. I'll actually link to the previous video in this series if you haven't seen it. And if you haven't, then, you know, go watch that so you can get your business up and running in the first place. And other than that, as always, you know, go make your world, and I'll see you next time.